Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Software Solutions Group Year-End Closing. How to make the year-end close in Microsoft Dynamics GP simple and painless. I am Devin Southall. I am a GP implementation consultant who's been at Software Solutions Group for over 10 years. I have a background in accounting and small business. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about creating a new fiscal year. If you haven't already, you're going to want to soon. We're actually going to demo that. We're going to talk about the various module year-end closes, the sizes, their relative importance, and we'll talk about each of those. We're going to talk about the financial year-end close, and then we're going to delve into Payables 1099 printing. If you saw this last year, there are a few small changes just to keep aware of and some things that we want to talk about. Alrighty. Everyone hear me? If not, please use that chat window. All right. First of all, let's talk about if your fiscal year is not calendar. If that's the case, you actually have two close processes you'll want to do. On the calendar year, there's an option in sales and purchasing, the receivables and the payables and payroll. And then during your fiscal year, you'll want to do also sales and purchasing, fixed asset, financial. Tax and inventory is kind of up to you. It has to do with how you want those summary numbers calculated. All right, so first off, demo, creating a fiscal year. I'm going to be demonstrating in GP 2016 if you haven't seen that before. This is 2016. Notice the icon is a little different than the 2015 or the 2013 versions, but pretty much the rest of this is the same. Your fiscal year is here under Administration, under Company, Setup, and here's fiscal periods. So if we're doing the drop down, it's GP, Tools, Setup, Company, Fiscal period, same place. Now here's the confusing part. I have all my years in my drop down here. I've already made 2018, so we're going to demonstrate 2019. You actually go into this drop down, you highlight it, and you type the new year. When I hit tab, it's going to fill in my first day and last day and number of periods. So it's defaulting first day and last day from what's already set up. If this is wrong, you're going to want to look at your years and see what's going on. And it's always just going to guess 12 periods because that's typical. At this point, we are not done. We want to hit the Calculate button. When we hit the Calculate button, our grid's going to fill in. And we have periods. It shouldn't take that long. You can change the names here if you want, but be very careful that you don't change it into something that the budget in Excel will think is a date, so no slashes and stuff. But October, November is fine, period 1, whatever you want to do there. Or you can just leave them as period. And now that year is closed. There's no the year is created. There's no save or anything. There's no okay. The year is created. If I close out and I come back in, it's there. Now I have up to 19. All right. Any questions on that? All right, I don't see any chat, so we're going to keep going. All right, so once I've closed anywhere, can I do transactions in 2017? Yes. Even before you close, you can do transactions in 2017. Notice I have a little note here, payroll and fixed assets is different, and we'll talk about that. Oh, I'm just going to hit next. Apparently, I keep hitting the wrong button. All right, so will history be deleted? No, as long as your maintain history checkboxes are selected. Now, these are located in different places. For the modules of General Ledger, Bank Rec, and Payroll, it's in Module Setup. For vendors, customers, items, and tax details, it's on every single card. So you're going to want to check that carefully using a smart list. All right, before doing any year-end close or routine, you want to get all your users out of GP and any related programs that use GP. You're going to want to back up your database. If you're going to archive, you're going to want to back up Dynamics too. Dynamics is the database that holds your users, some of your setup and stuff. You want to run the closer routine, and it is always faster on the server, so that's something to keep in mind. And only let the users back in if the process was successful. If the process is not successful and help is not imminent, you're going to want to put those backups back in place. All right, somebody has a question. Hold on. All right, what can we do for you?
Hi, this is Thao from Midwest Inc. We have used GP for several years, and I think
Okay.
every year we have to close previous year, right? So is it
Correct.
slideshows like brand new for the people who just new to GP, or even if we already use it for several years, we still have to follow these steps?
These are the steps. So this is the steps for closing, whether you're new or you've used it for years.
Oh, okay. So, but is that a lot of, because I have my note for every year before we close. So a lot of change in this version, or you just do this for people who are new?
Oh, our slideshow today. Our slideshow today is virtually the same as last year, but there are a couple little small changes. There's been some revisions and recommendations from Microsoft. One that's notable that we will talk about is that they are now recommending that the financial year-end close is done on the server, and then there are some 1099 changes. Alrighty?
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you.
No problem. All right. All right, so moving on. Housekeeping. During the close process, it's a great time for GP routines that move to history. Notably, paid transaction removal and receivables, which is not a removal. It's actually a move to history. That's confusing. And also remove completed purchase orders, which is, again, not actually a removal. It's a moving to history. Note, you want to make sure you have a backup before you do these, and if you've done it in the past, it may make sense to call us first and have us run some scripts, because if there's duplicates, you'll have issues with this. There is a routine called financial period consolidation. We do not recommend this because it actually makes unbalanced journal entries, and if you have questions about that, you can contact support and we can give you more information of why we don't recommend it. All right, housekeeping. Should you run the GP utilities for checklinks or reconciles? We do not recommend these to be run routinely unless you have a specific data issue you're trying to fix. Microsoft many years ago used to say, run checklinks, run reconcile all the time. They've sort of backed off on this a little bit, and really it's not first line of defense is run checklinks or reconciles, or even to run them proactively. Our suggestion is always to do it in a test company first and check the data very carefully. We have found that these change financial data, permanently remove records, and not all changes are listed on the reports, particularly like the financial reconcile just says done. There's no report even if it's changed numbers. So just something to keep in mind, not recommended to just routinely run these. Module closes for AR, AP, and tax. What do these do? They reset various year-to-date fields to 0. They move the year-to-date number that's currently there to the prior year-to-date fields. You will see these fields on smart lists, screens such as this customer summary inquiry screen, and there's a vendor one, and summary reports. The system's going to work fine if you actually never run these close, and I've run into lots of clients that never ran them. If you want to run them, ideally you want to run them in that perfect window somewhere between December 30th and January 2nd. And then I give you the path to tax. What about your 1099s? The Microsoft instructions, I will admit, are confusing. It acts like you have to run your 1099s. You don't, technically. They're independent of the GP closes. You can run your 1099s before, after, or whatever. And we'll talk about how to run those later. I'll say one caveat to the 1099s. If you have temporary vendors that are 1099able, and you're planning on removing the 1099, the temporary vendors with that routine, it does pay attention to what year you're in, whether you're going to remove them or not. So just something to keep in mind. Again, if you're planning on using temporary vendors that have 1099s and you're planning on running that temporary vendor delete, just do that after your 1099s probably. So just a little caveat there. Okay. module close for inventory. It resets your various year-to-date fields to 0. It moves the year-to-date numbers to the prior year-to-date fields. Again, that perfect window between December 30th and January 2nd. Very important. The check boxes in the middle that are in yellow, these do remove data. It's not like the ones earlier that I said aren't really removing. These are really removing data. And again, the system's going to work fine if you don't close this. But if you want those numbers to be correct, that's your best bet. And we recommend these days, the problem is, particularly with payables, these numbers are never actually going to be perfect. There's no perfect window. GP is a fabulous system. You can be in 2 years at once. You can be in 2 periods at once. The problem is with these closed processes, it's not date sensitive. So if you want those numbers to be perfect, let us know. We have scripts that can be used to correct the numbers after the fact so that they are right. Something to think about. All right. Any questions before we move on to payroll on inventory, AR, or AP?
Yes, I just want to ask a question. Can we get this presentation emailed to us?
Sure. No problem.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Just email support and they can send it out to you. Any other questions on ARAP, tax, or inventory before we move on to payroll briefly? All right. Let's talk about the payroll year-end closing. The payroll year-end closing process is different. It actually creates your year-end file for printing your W-2s, W-3s, or your 1099s, etc. The process can be needed for corrections, and you always want to make a backup before running this close. There is a Microsoft KB article. There's actually KB articles for all the modules. I have the links at the end, and we can send those out to you. Follow this very carefully. Very quickly to go over the steps for people who aren't familiar with it. There's tax tables for payroll. When you do the year-end close, you want to make sure you have a 2016 tax table. When you do payroll for 2017, you want to make sure you have a 2017 tax table in place. And we put a little infographic in to explain this. So if you can finish your payroll, do your closing, print your 1099s, put on your tax tables, and run your payroll, that's perfect. That's the easiest path. If for some reason you have to start 2017 payroll before you are completely finished with 2016, here is your path here. Basically, you're toggling your tax tables, making sure you have the right one in place when you need it. And if you are on payroll, you've already been contacted because there is a year-end service pack update for you guys, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later for the rest of you not on payroll for your 1099s. All right. Questions on payroll before I move? Any questions? All right. I'm going with no on that. So we're going to keep. Oh, yeah, go on.
The fixed asset, like for all these AP, AR, fixed asset, we can close them separately, right?
Correct. Yes. Each of the module closes are separately and independent.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right. So let's talk fixed assets. Like payroll, fixed assets is a hard close. You run your year-end close for one or more books, and the fixed asset module as a whole is a hard close, meaning you can be only in 1 year at a time, and that's for all books. Although you close each book independently, your tax book, your internal book, you can't move ahead with the next year and run depreciation until all the books are closed. You must finish all transactions, additions, retirements, depreciations for the year before you close. And you cannot run depreciation for the next year until you have finished closing all of the books. And most reports cannot be run after closing. And again, there is a knowledge base article for this. It has a quite extensive list of reports that they suggest you run. Do remember that the fixed asset change does allow that depreciation report to be run in a historical version. That's after close, but the rest of them are not. All right. Any questions on fixed assets before I move on to the biggie that everyone can? Any questions on fixed assets? All right. We're going to move on and talk about the financial year-end close. All right, so the financial GL close, what does it do? It creates the beginning balances for the balance sheet accounts and the retained earnings. It deletes your unused inactive accounts if you do not check the boxes to preserve them. And is it a hard close on the prior year? So what that means is if you're closing 2016, you cannot make entries until 2015. Now keep in mind, if you are on a more recent version, there is the unclose routine. So perchance, if you're on that version, you could unclose 16 so that you can make corrections to 15. But it is a process. You need to get people out, so on and so forth. All right. Can you still make entries to the year after it is closed? Yes, even in your subledgers. There is a checkbox in General Ledger setting called Allow Posting to History. This allows this to happen. And remember, it'll look at your fiscal period closings also. One thing is if you're doing that, your posting journals look double. Every journal entry actually repeats itself, once for the date you're posting it, and then again for the last day of the year. That second entry is actually to your balance brought forward period to adjust your beginning balances. So we get a lot of support calls and questions about that. Oh my gosh, it looks like it's doubling. Oh, you're posting to history. Yeah, that's what it does. So just so you know. All right. When should you do your financial year-end closing? Technically, any time is possible. The best time is after your subledgers are completed for the year, so your receivables, your payables, your bank, your inventory, and so on, and after the bulk of your year-end entries are made. You want your beginning balance numbers to look clean. If you've got a bunch of entries in and out, it kind of looks messy. And before you need to run financial statements for the new year, because you do not have those beginning balances brought forward, you can't really run financial statements without doing some monkeying around and some gymnastics. You don't have beginning balance numbers. Most people close around mid-February. That seems to be a good, perfect time for everybody. Some important close steps, and we're going to go over a couple of these. Check all your account posting types. Can I say that again? Check all your account posting types. Every year we get a couple calls. I've closed my year and I have this account that should have been a balance sheet and it wasn't, or vice versa. Now the steps from Microsoft is to do that unclose process, get everyone out of the system. It's not pretty. Just check it first. Post all your transactions. If you have journal entries hanging out, it's going to warn you. You don't have to, I guess, if they're for future years, but it's just cleaner. Make sure everything's posted. Get everyone out of GP. Please get everyone out of GP. Verify you have sufficient free hard drive space on your GP server. Huge deal. We have year-ends that crash every year because there was not enough space on the server. Microsoft now actually has a recommendation for us. You need to at least have space for your GP database to double in size. And if you're doing backups of details, you're going to want even more than that, like a log backup. We strongly recommend you make backups and archive them. So talk to IT about where we can archive these and keep them. They're fabulous for us to have if something happens and we can go back to them and compare. Having that point in time, even if it is 6 or 9 months ago, sometimes is great. Do not end task on your close, even if it says not responding. Windows likes to say not responding if it's thinking. Don't end task. Check your close before letting people back into GP to do this work. Microsoft recommends making another backup and archiving this one also in case later you discover a year-end close. We haven't found a need for that second backup, so that's really preference. But it's good to think about. And if there's any issues, restore the backup and try again or try in a test company. Microsoft's very clear that you should not use the reverse historical year, so that unclosing, to fix a failed close. You need to call for help. Again, I can't stress this enough. We get calls every year from someone who the close crashed, they ended the close, they let people back in without returning to the backup, and it's not pretty. It's sort of gives everyone angina. So please follow all the steps. Any questions on those steps before I move on to showing you the account posting types and how we recommend checking them? I don't see anything in the chat, so.
God damn. Oh,
all right.
Hello?
Yes.
I have a question about deleted or unused inactive accounts. You said if a certain box is not checked, it'll automatically delete.
I'm going to show you the screen in a few minutes.
Okay, cool.
We'll get there. No problem. Right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have some recurring badges, and then maybe some badge. I leave the number in there because most of the time the number repeats.
The recurring batches are fine. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question. Yeah, reoccurring batches, you're always going to have some of those, and it actually won't give you the warning if your unposted batch is reoccurring. It'll only give you for single-use batches.
Okay.
I should probably change the slide for next time, huh? Any other questions on that? All right, we're going to go through a couple of these steps now. All right, so first thing I want to show you is checking the posting types. So give me a second here, and we're going to actually demonstrate it. I am pulling up my GP, and I'm going to go to SmartList. And under SmartList, I am going to open up Financial, and I am going to open up Accounts. Just going to go to the straight up SmartList as it exists. I'm coming here to Columns, and I'm going to add the main account segment. So here's my main account segment. Every one of you has an account segment that's specified as main in your setup. This should be your natural or the power that defines what type of account it is. If it isn't, please call support and let's get it fixed. My cutoff in this database is 3,000. So I'm going to say main account segment is, and I'm going to start with less than 3,000. Smart lists are always less than and equal to. So if I have an account named 3,000, it's actually going to show up on both lists. And I'm going to do the posting type is equal to, no, I'm going to say not equal to balance sheet. So less than 3,000 and not equal to balance sheet. I'm going to hit OK. And I don't get anything. This is what I want to get. I want to get nothing. Nothing is set up wrong in this direction. I'm going to go to my search, and I'm going to flip it to greater than 3,000 and equal to balance sheet. So search in the other direction. And I'm getting a bunch of stuff. Now, one caveat. Account category number. Notice some of these have words and some of these have zeros. The ones that are zeros are either allocation accounts, which this one is, or unit accounts. Those aren't real accounts. It doesn't really matter. But all of these up here are probably set up wrong or something funky's going on. And I should use my smart list, so click into these and fix these accounts. I've been monkeying with this database, so I have some messed up data here. So these should be P&L accounts. Questions on the Smart List? Beautiful. I don't hear any questions on that. So let's go back to our slideshow. So the first thing to talk about is our year-end closing screen. And you will notice here on my little demonstration, here is the checkbox about removing unused segment numbers or inactive accounts. If you are not in GP 2013 or later, you're not going to see the progress bar, so the screen was changed slightly. But this is what it looks like. Any questions on this screen? And again, if you're not familiar, it's under Financial, it's under Routines, Year-End Closing. Here it is. Here's mine. So if I want to maintain my inactive accounts, I check this box. Only ones with budgets are all inactive, and I press Close My Year. All right. So again, the new button is Reverse the Historical Year. Again, we need a backup when we do this. We need people out of the system. Same rules really apply for reversing a year as doing it. And don't hit this Close Year button twice. Sometimes it's quite fast, and we have had people who actually pressed it twice and closed the next year on themselves. All right. When you are done, you're done, go on. No. Check your close. Was there any errors during processing? Is your retained earnings entry correct? Does your trial balance total to zero? Microsoft actually recommends running financial reports before and after. That might be a little bit overkill, but that's up to you. Now close your fiscal periods. And if there are any issues, we cannot stress this enough, restore your backup before you put people back into the system. We can do lots of stuff if you've got that backup and no one's done anything, but if you let people back in the system, now we're picking tables apart and trying to fix it. All right. Any questions before I move on to 1099s?
Hi, I have a question. If you tell it to remove an inactive account, but say you inactivated it the year before, and in your income statement it'll say like last year amount and current amount. If I've deleted that last year's inactive account,
it's not actually going to delete
that. Can be a problem?
No.
Okay.
No. So it does not delete inactive accounts that don't have history. Let me try that again, because I think I said that wrong. It will not delete inactive accounts with history. You're kind of stuck with those, but what you can do is mark them inactive and have your account list be filtered. So let me show you that real quick, because it's a good point.
Does the history go back to a certain number of years?
It's as anything in the system. Yeah,
okay.
No, yeah. So here's the interesting point on inactive accounts. Some people put in accounts as inactive, like by default or something. As long as there's any transaction whatsoever for that account in the system, it will not delete it. But if you have, let's say, maybe you put new ones in as inactive, those can get blown away if they've got no transactions. And that budget is sort of a problem, which is why they added the budget checkbox. Okay? So they added this with budget so that you didn't blow up your budgets because all of a sudden you blew them away. But one thing to think about is on your lookup for accounts, you can set it to not show you inactive, and that's a really nice way to get those inactives to go away. All right?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Any other questions on the year-end close before we go on to 1099s? Yeah.
Is this one just for financial model?
Say the question a different way.
Like you say, like this is the steps for closing the year, right?
Correct, yes.
But before you say we close like each model separately. So is it
Correct.
is it like only for financial or
so the steps for closing everything in some ways are the same, as in get everyone out. Hold on, let me find them at the beginning. One of these slides here. Give me a second here. All right. Before anything, any of the closes, you want to get everyone out of GP, you want to back it up, you want to run the close routine and let users back in if it's successful. That has to do with ARAP, any of the module closes. If you're doing the financial year-end close, oh dear. Apparently my internet just went down.
No.
So if you're doing the financial year-end close, those are those additional steps that we just went through, which is checking your balances. Those are the additional steps specific to financial. Does that help?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, beautiful. All right, it says it's reconnecting. Never good when your internet flickers in the middle of a presentation. All right, any other questions on financial while we're hoping this comes back up?
Do we get this sent to our email like after the presentation?
Sure. Yeah, just send an email to support and we can send it over to you.
Okay, and it's like including everything you speak or just a slideshow?
The slideshow, but we're going to put this up on YouTube, which is what we typically do every year, is we'll put it up on YouTube so that... Rick, could you go ask if our internet's out? Mine is. Oh, yes, it's out. Lovely. All right, so we're going to give this another minute to see if it comes back up. Otherwise, if you want to know about 1099s, let me walk through 1099s verbally, I guess, since, yeah, lovely. All right, any other financial closes, questions? All right, we're going to move on to 1099s. I'm going to leave the sound connection up just in case someone can let me know if my visual reconnects. Just mute your thing if you're not speaking, if you don't mind, please. All right, let's talk about 1099s. It's under routines, print 1099s. There are two icons. The printer icon is for your edit list. The other one actually says print forms.
Morning, Fiscal, pick up 199, please. Morning, pick up 199.
They actually have a nice edit.
Whoever's having the page, could you mute your speaker if you can, please? That would be fabulous. Thanks. All right. So let's talk about 1099 changes. If you're in GP 2010, there are particular steps. Just let us know if you've got questions on this if you haven't done it before. Anyone in GP 2013 or later, there is a utility to update the 1099 information. So if you're going to toggle from a vendor to not a vendor, yeah, I know, thanks. They're letting me know the internet's out. All right. So GP 2013 or later, there's a utility to update your 1099 information. Do use this. That will help change the transactions to be flagged properly. And in GP 2013 or later, you can print 1096s, which is the cover page. So that is one thing to talk about. That cover page has changed for 2016. So if you are planning on printing your 1096 out of GP, unless you get the year-end update, which we talked about a little earlier, the boxes are not going to line up. So ask us if you've got questions on it. Basically, there was a whole series of boxes, and they squeezed one more at the end. So just keep that in mind. That's the other change that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, is that the 1096, that summary for your 1099s cover page, has an additional box. All right. Any other questions on the 1099 process since you can't see it? All right, I've got no questions on that. One thing to keep in mind, remember we're here to help you. We have support and we can do break fix assistance from Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. It's really hard for us to accommodate questions or could you close with us during that time. So this year we have a new thing that we're offering is scheduling year-end closes with us. So we will work with you to have a time. Yay, we're back. Can everyone see me?
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
All right. Team, should we go back and review some of those 1099 slides that I skipped over because you couldn't see them? Was that a consensus of yes to 1099s?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. Let me go back to the beginning then. 1099s. All right. I'm going to mute y'all for a few minutes. All right. 1099s. It is under Routines, Print 1099s. The printer icon here is your edit list. The one next to it that says Print Forms is the one that actually prints your forms. Remember that the address information and the federal ID comes from your company setup. If you want something more than just the edit list, we can build you a smart list so you can see what's going to come up. That's pretty easy in pretty much all the more current versions. 1099 changes. So if you're on GP 2010, your 1099 will print out even if the vendor is set as not a 1099 type, if you have amounts in the 1099 box. So at some point during the year it was set as a 1099 vendor. There is steps to clear this on a particular screen, the 1099 detail screen. So you have to change it back to a 1099 vendor, clear it out, and then change it back to not. If you are on GP 2013, please do not use the 1099 detail screen to make changes. They added a utility to update the 1099 information on the vendor and all transactions. And they added 1099 transactions rather than editing the total on the details like you did before. And in this version, you can print the 1096. Also in this version, each vendor has a 1099 address ID specified versus in the prior version, it just used the primary address on the card. So you purchase your 1099s from an office supply company, Office Max, Staples, Office Depot, whatever. Check your alignment. I had to move mine over by 1/4 inch to get it to line. So on this print screen that pops up, there's a new tab, pre-printed form options, that allows you to change your vertical and horizontal alignment. Just print one off, hold it up to the window, see what your boxes line up. And here's the change that I was mentioning before for your 1096, so your cover page. This box over here on the far end in green is what they added. So all of these got a little smaller, and then actually that box moved up, and this one got added. One more change, if you printed the 1099 interest, box 12 was always there, but it got a label on the actual form. So that doesn't change GP per se, but this 1096 does. So that's a bit of an issue. If you're planning on printing your 1096, you can either print it and compare it to last year's form to figure out what boxes you want to check, or talk to us about the year-end update, the service packs that fixes that. All right, so the screen called Update 1099 Information. It's under Payables and it's under Routines. So you should not update your vendor card if you need to change a vendor from 1099able to not, or vice versa. I'm sorry, it's under utilities. And this will replace the totals and reassign the transactions. Now, I'm going to warn you, we tried this for fun. If you pull this screen up and hit process, you're going to blow all of your vendors to be dividend, ordinary dividends for every year you have in the system. So be very, very, very careful on this screen. Make sure you put a vendor down in your restrictions, and make sure you check that this vendor hasn't been used in prior years. You really only want to change the current year. Date is a range on here. I see that someone has a question, so let me open it.
If my GP say Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015, does that mean my version is 2015?
Correct. Yes, exactly. And so you have all the changes we're talking about.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Any other questions on 1099s? Let's see, do I have another slide? Yes, I have the edit transaction screen. Okay, so let me keep going here. So the edit 1099 transactions, it's under purchasing transactions, so it's actually a new transaction screen. And here's where you can see all the transactions. So notice here, it has transactions from 2013 through 17. If you have a vendor that you've used in the past and you want to change it, on the prior screen, let me jump back one, you would want to just change the vendor, and then you would come to this screen, this screen, and see what transactions you wanted to change. And so in this particular scenario, maybe they weren't 1099able in the past, but in 2017 they are. I would want to just change these last two transactions. And so again, we do not want to use the edit detail screen that we used in past versions in GP 2013 or later, which means 2015, 2015 R2, or 2016. All right. So again, use those two screens, but use them wisely. And remember that your 1099s are check date specific. So just because the transaction is in a particular year, the 1099s are about when it was paid. So if you have to change a vendor that you've used in prior years, be very careful of which transactions you actually flag. All right, let me open up questions for 1099. So any other questions on 1099s? All right. Year-end links. So Microsoft has very specific year-end steps. I have talked about where we recommend differences from what they say and why in here. One more caveat that I wanted to talk about on this slide is if you have analytical accounting, Microsoft not only has a knowledge base, but they have a blog posting with quite a few things that they want you to look at. And if you have payroll, there's also blog postings with information about those. So either of those two modules, if you're not familiar with these blog postings, email support and we can get you those links. So again, that's analytical accounting and payroll. Some particular steps and things that they want you to pay attention to. Again, the two biggies from Microsoft this year is, and they're not in these knowledge bases, they were in those blog posts, is the one that they're suggesting that the financial year-end close happens on the server, and two, the recommendation of actual number for space requirement, which is prepared for your year-end data, your database to double in size during your year-end. So here is a chance for general questions. Anything I have not talked about on year-ends that you have questions on? Okay. The microphone is open if you have questions. I'm not hearing anyone. Remember, we talked about your break-fix support between 8:30 and 5 p.m. Monday for Friday. We are going to be closed on Boxing Day and the 2nd of January. I think that's pretty much traditional. And we also can schedule our team to close with you. So what we will do is verify drive space, make your archival backups, walk you through the steps. We will do the close on the server, which is Microsoft's new recommendation. We can assist with troubleshooting as needed. So again, contact our support email. That's always sort of your first line if you've got questions, concerns, or anything you want to talk about. Email support, they can route it best for you.
I have a question on the
sure.
On the I just suddenly forget the 1099 vendor.
Yes.
I think I remember before. If we set up the vendor as 1099 eligible, and then
correct,
we remove it. We uncheck the box. Then all the amount not calculated as 1099 anymore. But now you say it's calculated as 1099 even we uncheck the box.
All right. So in prior versions, if you changed it just on the vendor card, it would not print a 1099 in year end. But in current versions, so GP 2013 and later, just changing the vendor card is not sufficient because all of those transactions that were paid or created during the time period it was set as a 1099 vendor are still flagged as 1099 transactions and will still produce a 1099. And so you actually have to go back and, depending on which version you're in, go through the steps of changing it to those transactions to no longer be 1099 also. And
okay.
So in your version,
Yeah, and before I remember, I don't remember exactly where it is. I have to look, but I remember I can just go in and change the number in some like adjusted column, like 1099 adjusted amount, something like that.
The edit details. Oh, question: do you have a binary stream module? Do you use multi-entity?
I think so, but I'm not really
okay.
sure. There's a lot of terms I'm not sure.
Okay. If you have add-on modules, it may look slightly different than that. Based on what you're telling me of a 1099 adjusted column, you may have binary stream multi-entity. So if you have questions on that for your particular version, feel free to contact support, and we can clarify and make sure that you are doing the right steps for you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions? So put all our pretty faces up while I'm waiting. All right. So hopefully this has been helpful. And thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.